Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Add them. Koई baat nahi. We'll just stay quiet for 5 minutes. Use WhatsApp for communication.
Should I add them?
Yeah, add.
Yeah, हो गया live.
Great. I've added them.
Recording is not over. Testing.
Hi guys, is there a delay?
Ma'am, we just starting now.
Okay, no, I was just checking. Yeah, everything's okay.
Arushi, I guess you're mute. Just check once.
Arushi, we can't hear you.
Uh,
Hello everyone, am I audible right now?
yeah.
Okay, great. So sorry for the glitches. I welcome you all to this Fragile X training workshop by Doctors for a Cause in collaboration with the Fragile X Society of India. Doctors for a Cause is a non-governmental organization working for humanity and goodwill. We want to lend voices to the people who haven't been able to make their place or are still struggling to make one. And all these social causes are what we take up via our different task forces. So Doctors for a Cause currently has 8 task forces, logos of which you can see on the screen. So women's health, academics and education, sexual and reproductive health, mental health, public health, LGBTQ, animal welfare, and this one, the task force for differently abled, the one that is hosting the show. Recently, we reached a family of 10,000 followers on Facebook and 4,000 on Instagram. If you've been with us through this journey, we are really grateful. And if not, hopefully we'll see you for our future endeavors. We started back in 2017 with college kids who had leftover money after a fest, and we decided to invest it into an orphanage and meeting kids instead of splurging it on ourselves. And from there, it's been 4 years, and today we have a pan-India presence and a lot of volunteers who are supporting us and working with us to make our causes come true. So this event is being hosted by the Task Force for Differently Abled, and our motto is that neither does my disability define me, nor does it decide who I want to be. So we really believe that whatever your condition is, it should not be a hindrance in what you wish to achieve in life, and there is always worth in what you are, who you are, and what you do. So we have a small community that is working for it, and we aim to sensitize the masses and build a world that is sensitive to the needs and respects the people who have different abilities than the ones you see around. So, yeah. So currently we're actually celebrating a Disability Pride Month for the month of July, and we've been putting out a lot of informative content, events, videos, and you can check out our Instagram and Facebook and YouTube for the same. This event is a part of the same. So today we also have a lot of other interesting events coming up about which we'll tell you at the end of this workshop. For now, let's go on and talk a little bit about the Fragile X Society. Shalini ma'am, over to you.
Hello. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I think Doctors for a Cause is truly doing an amazing job of not only sticking to being doctors, but also making a difference in the community. And that's like really amazing. So very good evening to everyone here. And thank you all for being here on a Sunday. And yeah, I mean, usually you would want to rest it out and sleep, but here you are trying to get some medical information. So my presentation on Fragile X is not going to be very, very technical and medical. It's more about putting the concept and giving you case studies and real life stories. And of course, we are very open to any number of questions you may have. And let's take it from here. I hope you all enjoy this evening.
Amazing. So as ma'am screen shares, I'd like to go over some basic rules. So whatever, we have a lot of polls and audience content in here. So I request you guys, please use the chat box to give your answers. If you have any queries, please leave them in the chat box. We will answer them when we have our doubt clearing sessions. And apart from that, you see our chat moderators, Ishan and Farhad, in the chat box. So feel free to interact. And in case anyone gets disconnected or is facing any problems, please feel free to use the WhatsApp group of the training workshop to communicate to us, and we will connect you back in. So that's about it from my side. Yes, ma'am.
Is the screen visible?
No, ma'am, we can't see your screen now.
Okay, so 1 minute. Why is it not visible? So I went to share screen and share.
Yes,
now
ma'am.
It's visible now, ma'am.
Ma'am, I can see it.
you can. Okay, here we go. So I like to call this workshop Decoding Fragile X.
Just a request, please keep your mic mute, please, everyone. Yeah, ma'am, continue.
Yeah, so I like to call this workshop Decoding Fragile X, because actually understanding Fragile X is very, very complicated and very complex. I'm going to try my best to make it easy for you all. I did struggle to try and make it very interesting and fun for the young audience on a Sunday evening, rather than Netflixing and eating popcorn. You're attending something here. So, ripped jeans are in fashion. Everyone agrees. I don't need to take a poll on this. I'm going to get yes everywhere. And today we are here to talk about a gene which shuts down and causes a medical condition. Fragile X is a family of medical conditions that are all caused because of one gene, and that's the Fmr1 gene located on the X chromosome. Of course, we all know 23 pairs of chromosomes, X and Y. The X chromosome carries the Fmr1 gene. When there are a few changes on that gene, scientifically known as mutations or CGG repeats, the changes and the repeats are what actually cause the condition. So each one of us has the Fmr1 gene, and we have our repeats that's up to 44. And our Fmr1 gene is functioning to its optimal level. We have FMR protein, and we're all doing well. Now, between 44 to 55 is the gray zone, which they're yet studying more about. Between 55 to 200 repeats, they are connected to other conditions because of the expansion of the CGG repeat, and that is moreover connected to women and men who are carriers of the gene. Those are known as the pre-mutations because they carry the pre-mutation of the gene. That's between 55 to 200, and they have a very high chance of passing it on to the next generation. And somewhere down the lineage, they can have a child with the full mutation. Okay, so we're looking at one gene, the Fmr1 gene, and everything that happens is because of changes or the number of repeats on that gene. So these changes, I like to call them the three musketeers because they're always together, and of course they create a lot of havoc. And I'm trying to make this a little fun and less boring. So the changes on the Fmr1 gene, like I said, it's measured in repeats. Let's say it's like a coding and the coding gets messed up. So when the coding gets messed up, or you can say when it crosses 200 repeats, the Fmr1 gene shuts down and does not produce FMR protein, which is essential for brain development. So this is our musketeer number 1, where we have a child who has Fragile X syndrome. The coding is completely messed up. The gene has shut down and it's not making a protein that's important for brain development. Children with Fragile X syndrome would display features like intellectual disability, speech delay, autism or autistic traits, sensory processing disorders. They have specific physical features like a long face, large ears, prominent jawline, and a low muscle tone. Fragile X is the only known single gene cause of intellectual disability and autism worldwide. Yeah, I know, it sounds very, very surprising. So my first question and the poll, how many of you know that Fragile X can cause autism? Once you've got the answers, just give me a go ahead.
Guys, please type a yes or no in the chat box.
So my question is, can Fragile X cause autism? Akanksha, you'll tell me when to move ahead?
Yes, ma'am. So we received one no response and the rest of them, they say yes.
Okay, perfect. So which alphabets do you see here? This is something everyone's going to go typing. Come on. I'm sure everyone's seen all the A's. I want to know how many can see the X's.
Everyone in the chat box can see A and X both.
And what do you read here? Of course, autism is right in the front and very evident and very straightforward. And somewhere hidden down there, written in the opposite direction, is Fragile X. This slide was made like this on purpose because when you go out there in the world and you're practicing, you will come across children and you will tend to think they have autism or they're on the autism spectrum disorder. But you need to dig deep and really maybe pay attention to be able to figure out whether the autism you are seeing is stemming from Fragile X or not. If it is, it completely changes things for the child and the family. So that brings us to the key differences between autism and Fragile X. Autism is a behavioral condition. Fragile X is a genetically defined medical condition. Autism, there's no blood test available to test for autism. And Fragile X can be confirmed with a blood test. There's no prenatal test available for autism. There is a definite prenatal test available for Fragile X. And this again reinforces the importance of awareness on Fragile X and for all of you doctors to suspect Fragile X in every child you see with autism, because that is a potential to change the life of that child and that family. So Fragile X affects 1 in 4,000 males and 1 in 6,000 females. And given our population, it's safe for me to say that we have around 4 lakh individuals in India who have Fragile X syndrome. So an accurate diagnosis will change the treatment for the child. Children with Fragile X syndrome have very high levels of anxiety. That's the first thing you will pick on, is a child with a very high level of anxiety. And before you start addressing any other needs of the child or start any therapy or medication, you need to address the anxiety. I mean, imagine this child is sitting for speech therapy with high anxiety. He's not going to deliver what you want, and your session is not going to be as successful as it should be. So it is important to understand, again, an accurate diagnosis opens the door for the child and the family. Now, this brings us to the other 2 musketeers we talked about. And this is the ones whose repeats are between 55 to 200. The Fmr1 protein is being produced and their brains are functioning very well, but they have the risk of passing on the condition to the next generation. And the next generation could be a pre-mutation or a full mutation. So in women who are carriers of the Fragile X pre-mutation, many of them can experience infertility. In fact, 20% of women who have a low ovarian reserve, who are carriers for the Fragile X pre-mutation, would have a low ovarian reserve and would need intervention to get pregnant. Also, male carriers who are above the age of 65 sometimes would present with balance issues and something like an ataxia. And that's all connected to that one gene. So all these 3 conditions, whether it's FXPOI, FXTAS, or Fragile X syndrome, are all connected to changes on one gene. So would you believe me if I say that in 2010, a 10-year-old child was living with the diagnosis of autism, but actually he had Fragile X? That's 11 years ago.
Guys, you can type in your opinions in the chat box, yes or no. Okay, so Sanchi says yes. Anyone else? Okay, ma'am, we can go ahead maybe. No one's responding.
So, how many of you are aware or actually even believe that there is a connection between infertility and Fragile X?
Okay, so we received many other people saying yes.
So here is a very interesting case study. Let's see what's in store.
My name is Veena Naren. My child's name is Varun Naren, and he's 18 years old. He was diagnosed at age 10. So once he got tested and once we got a confirmation of Fragile X, I think what really helped is we could look at what was the reason for his anxiety, and we could give him proper medication. We were already doing therapy much before that, but I think from the angle of medication, it really helped because at least we knew why we were giving him a medication, and a lot of target treatments happening for Fragile X. We have just one child. Yeah, I didn't conceive for a long time. And I conceived after 9 years. Yeah, so at least to IVF specialists or anyone going into gynecologist for testing, at least keep a red flag on as when you are going in and meeting a gynecologist and telling us you haven't conceived for a long time, to give a thought to Fragile X with whether, you need to get tested for Fragile X.
So this was the story of Veena. And in 2010, there was an article that Times of India had come up with because there was some breakthrough and news on Fragile X. And Veena and her husband read that article and they immediately called me and said, we think our son has Fragile X. He is currently been given the diagnosis of being on the spectrum. And nobody has ever spoken to us about Fragile X, but we would like to get him tested for Fragile X. And as I spoke to Veena, she talked to me about her infertility. So that was a red flag. The only reason in 2010 I agreed to send their sample for testing was the red flag of infertility, because in my opinion in 2010 I didn't think living in Mumbai they would have missed a diagnosis, and the test came out positive. And when I called Veena,
Kindly switch off your mics, please. Or Najib. Yeah, thank you.
So when I called Veena to give her diagnosis, of course she cried. But she said, Shalini, I'm crying because I'm relieved and I've actually got an answer for the last 19 years of my life. The first 9 years of trying to get pregnant and the next 10 years of living with the diagnosis of autism, but internally knowing that this was not autism, there was something we were missing, and we got our answers today. So to answer your questions and the poll I asked before, yes, infertility can be connected with Fragile X and autism can be missed. Fragile X can be missed. Sorry. So the Fragile X is a condition that can actually pass down generations silently. Every time you meet a family and you come across them saying, or you telling them your child has Fragile X, the first thing they're going to say is, no one in my family has this condition and there's no problem, etc., etc., etc. As professionals, you would want to challenge it, but I would say accept it, because like I say, it travels silently. It's not the family's mistake that they did not know that they had carriers of this condition in their family. So to be a more inclusive practitioner who thinks from the angle of the family, it's good to sometimes accept what they are saying. You know what you're saying is right, but they are saying what they know is right. And that's what they have experienced. And we know, and you know, that the gene travels down silently. It's not gone around announcing that, hey, I'm a premutation and I live in you. No, it actually does not do that. So the Fragile X gene was actually only discovered in the year 1991. And it passes down silently through generations and is only discovered when they have a child in the family. And then when we get into cascade testing and testing their siblings, etc., we would usually have 4 or 5 more individuals impacted with Fragile X. So in 2017, we had a conference in Bangalore, and there were many families who came to meet us. And we usually take an intake form, to get information about the child. So this parent comes back with this form, and I said, no, I don't think you've understood the form. I don't want the names of all your children. I only want the names of your child who has Fragile X. And as you can see, I've circled it. He says, all 3 children are affected with Fragile X syndrome. This is 2017, when a 14-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. We actually, because none of them were picked up. They weren't recognized. The first one was diagnosed with autism. The second one with a speech delay or global delay. And when the third one was born and he showed severe symptoms, is when the doctor checked all of them and they all had Fragile X syndrome. When you go out there and practice, and I am saying that out of every 100 children with autism that you see, 4 children actually have Fragile X, and that is the cause of their autism. It may seem like a small number to look out for. It may seem like a small population to be so alert for. But then at that point is when you need to remember all these stories and all these case studies I have shared with you. And that brings me to the next question for a poll. So, would you believe that in the year 2000, if I say a doctor told a mother, I think the problem is in your head, why don't you go have a second child and your first child's behavior will improve?
Guys, feel free to type in your answers in the chat box.
So I'm taking you to the next. So I'm taking you to the next case study, and you hear it from the mother.
My name is Sangeeta Jain. I have 2 boys, both are Fragile X. Okay. They're 20 and 22. They were diagnosed in 2000, both of them together. My oldest son was 3.5, and the younger was 6 months old. So, my older son is a mosaic Fragile X child, and he did not have any specific symptoms that we could sort of put a finger on. And even though I, as a mother, often felt that there was something behaviorally or something that wasn't working well, this was in 1999, 2000, when nobody had even heard of the term Fragile X syndrome. So I would have mentioned it to my pediatrician. I changed my pediatrician. We once had a surgery when we spoke about the fact that we thought there was something not quite right. I went to a child psychologist saying, I'm not able to, yet I was told at all times that it was perhaps more in my head than, was actually present. When my son was 2 years old, we were advised to have another child. We were actually advised to have another child, and we did have another child. Then my youngest was 6 months old. By then I was quite sure that the older one had some sort of an issue, which in the first diagnosis was termed as ADHD, okay, or PDD-NOS. And it's only subsequently in the later tests that my younger one came along, and which is why they felt that both of them needed to be tested, and that's how we came to the Fragile X diagnosis. But yes, all the 3 years that my oldest son, that I felt that there was something, if somebody had come out with a diagnosis, perhaps we would not even have had a second child. So that's the importance of testing. Well, I've definitely had my younger siblings tested. That's also because both of them were unmarried at the time that my children got diagnosed. It was very important for us to have them tested to see that this would not affect any further, than it already had. There was, when we went back, there was no history of Fragile X in the family. We were not able to find anyone who could have fitted into the typical symptoms. So it was a surprise and a shock for us. And once we knew that this had happened twice in my family, it was very important to get all my siblings tested to make sure that we could prevent it. And eventually, now that it's easier, or at least it's possible to have a child knowing that you're a carrier, and it's medically possible to have a child without the syndrome. I think it's even more important to get them tested.
So, Sangeeta is one of my, I think I could say favorite, because she's the first family I connected with way back in 2000. And her story is truly heart-wrenching when she goes to the pediatrician and says something's wrong, and she's actually advised to have a second child. And she today is living with 2 children with Fragile X syndrome.
My name.
This story is again, so every time we talk about Fragile X, you don't always have to see a delay in development. You can also sometimes see it come up at the age of 3 and 4. This is a story of a panwala who lives in Delhi and earns 10,000 rupees a month.
हमें तो जब वो 3 साल का हुआ तब पता चला, उसको दौरा पड़ा था एपिलेक्सी, तो हम कलावती में लेके गए, तो फिर वहाँ 8 दिन तक भर्ती रहा, तब हमें पता चला कि ये इसको फ्रजाइल एक्स है। हमें 3 साल तक कुछ पता ही नहीं था। जब से जन्म हुआ उसको उसने हर चीज लेट किया था, जैसे बैठना, चलना, बोलना, सब कुछ उसने लेट किया था, सब कुछ डिले था उसका। तो 3 साल बाद हमें पता चला फ्रजाइल एक्स है से, तो उस समय तो लगता है कि बहुत कुछ मतलब नहीं है, लेकिन समझ में नहीं आ रहा था कि क्या करना है क्या नहीं करना है। लेकिन जितना होता है मतलब वो सब कुछ ठीक है, बोलता है, बाकी सब चीज करता है वो, बस जैसे स्कूल में जाता है तो किसी दूसरे बच्चे को धक्का दे दिया या कहीं पे गाली सुन रहा है, वो गाली बोल रहा है। हम पूरी कोशिश करते हैं लेकिन फिर भी नहीं हो पाता। हम तो
So we started the Fragile X Society in 2003 with a very simple goal of trying to help families who have children affected. And like you see, when we came across families who have more than 1, 2, and 3 children affected, we had to take the next step of trying to create awareness on this condition. And we did see a change. We saw a change in the number of children getting diagnosed because of a higher level of awareness. In 2018, the Indian Academy of Pediatrics released the guidelines for Fragile X in India, and that's a very handy tool. Of course, it's available online. If anyone wants, they can message us, and we are happy to share a copy with you. And we are based out of Mumbai, and we have a networking all over India. So if you have a family based out of Jaipur, we would usually be able to connect them with another family based in Jaipur, and they can exchange resources, get help with which doctors are good, which therapist is good, which school is good. which is a very, very integral part. Having a child with special needs and not understanding what to do and not having the resources is very, very challenging for the family. We have a dedicated helpline number, which is always available for families. And yeah. So here is another story.
हेलो, ये मेरा बेटा है 6 साल का, अब फरवरी में 6 साल का हो जाएगा। जब ये 4 साल का था तब ये बोलता नहीं था, तो हमने इसका एक टेस्ट करवाया था। काफी जगह जयपुर में 2-3 हॉस्पिटलों में दिखाया था, तो उन्होंने डॉक्टर ने हमें कहा कि इसका एक फ्रेजाइल एक्स सिंड्रोम का टेस्ट करवाओ। तो जब ये 4 साल का था तब मैंने फ्रेजाइल एक्स सिंड्रोम का इसका टेस्ट करवाया था। वो यहाँ जयपुर में तो होता नहीं है, कहीं बाहर से होके आया था। वो जब टेस्ट 15 दिन से होके आया था तो उसमें एक जो फ्रेजाइल एक्स सिंड्रोम है ना, वो फुल म्यूटेशन आया था, इसकी जो टेस्ट रिपोर्ट आई थी। फिर मैंने इसके बारे में, फ्रेजाइल एक्स के बारे में नेट पे सर्च किया, काफी ढूंढा। उसके बाद मैंने शालिनी जी केडिया से के नंबर मिले, उनसे टॉप कांटेक्ट किया। उसके बाद मैंने कोलकाता में कॉन्फ्रेंस थी, उसमें भी गया मैं और मेरे सिस्टर। तो वहाँ पे मुझे काफी इसके बारे में जानकारी मिली, पता चला कि क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम होती है, फ्रेजाइल एक्स क्या होता है। बल्कि यहाँ के जो लोकल डॉक्टर्स हैं, जयपुर में काफी डॉक्टर्स तो इसके बारे में जानते ही नहीं है। काफी डॉक्टर्स तो इसके बारे में जानते ही नहीं है कि फ्रेजाइल एक्स क्या होता है और ये क्या होता है, कैसे होता है। काफी डॉक्टरों ने तो मुझे कहा ये है, वो है, ये है। उसके बाद में जब मैं शालिनी केडिया जी के कहने पे वहाँ कोलकाता गया, उसके बाद हमें वहाँ पे कुछ लगा कि हाँ, इसमें कुछ चेंजेस किया जा सकता है, इसको कुछ डेवलप किया जा सकता है, इसको मिल सकता है, ये भी नॉर्मल लाइफ जी सकता है। फिर मैं उम्मीद वहाँ मुंबई में आया, मैं, मेरी सिस्टर, मेरी वाइफ, मेरा बेटा, वहाँ उम्मीद के पास गए। वहाँ पे काफी कुछ पता चला, सीखा, देखा उनसे। और अब ये 2 साल हो गए मुझे इसके बारे में पता चले हुए। मैं इसके बारे में काफी लोगों को बताया। काफी मेरे भी यहाँ हमारे सिटी में भी बहुत सारे ऐसे पेरेंट्स हैं, उनको बच्चों की ये प्रॉब्लम है, उनको ये पता ही नहीं है। और इसका कोई इलाज तो हम चाहते हैं कि कोई इसका ट्रीटमेंट आए और हमें पता चले और इनकी भी लाइफ नॉर्मल हो सके।
So a very important part as you all go out and practice medicine is the information you receive before you are able to make a diagnosis, and I'm sure you all would agree. So for Fragile X syndrome in particular, we have actually put together an intake sheet which will often be guiding you towards what to look for and ask probing questions. It's very comprehensive. There are lots of hints which actually you would get. I mean, sometimes the families are so overwhelmed when they come to see you that they're not going to be able to remember everything. So we've actually put it all down here, and it makes the family think, and it empowers you with a better standpoint to help the family. We also have put together a lot of quick guides. We are living in an Insta world, and I don't expect every family to go through innumerable books before they even understand what's gone wrong with their child. And I'm very happy to share these resources with you. We have guides about spotting Fragile X, understanding it, strategies, and I would highly recommend those who are interested. You can follow us on Instagram because we keep putting up a lot of valuable content there. And if you need copies of any of these things, just DM us and we're happy to share it with you. This is the last case study, and then we're going to be opening up for questions.
Hi, this is Vimal Balachanda. I am Dhruv's mother. Dhruv has got Fragile X syndrome. He's 17 years old. This syndrome is detected by a blood test, which was done to him when he was 3.5. The test was recommended at NIMHANS. They recommended this test because in my biodata, they found that I have a cousin sister who had a child with Fragile X syndrome. Now, I had not been genetically counseled before I had Dhruv, though my cousin is closely related to me. After a few years, my own sister also had a child with Fragile X syndrome, which was detected some years later because it showed the signs were lesser in her case, and that she was asked to do the test only when the child was 5 years old. All three of us now have 3 children amongst us with Fragile X syndrome, and at least in these 3, 2 could have been prevented, or at least an awareness could have been there if we had done genetic counseling. The thing with Fragile X syndrome is that it's not like you can, if you have a child and people say, oh, be positive, it will not happen to you just because it's someone else in the family is affected. All these things do not work. It's science. If I am a carrier, there's a good 50% possibility of my having a child with Fragile X syndrome. So it is pure science. And just like Down syndrome now is being tested for so many years, is being tested in the fetus, and parents are aware. Same thing can be done for Fragile X syndrome. Prevention is the best form of cure. Until a cure is found for Fragile X syndrome, it's better to prevent it. Fragile X syndrome is a drain on the family, though the children are very lovable, friendly, funny, and a joy to be around. But yes, their needs are plenty, and a lot of sacrifices have to be made to raise them. So awareness of Fragile X syndrome, prevention of spreading in the family. If anybody is newly diagnosed, it's extremely important that they guide their other family members, their siblings and cousins, to take up that blood test. Once that is out of the way, nobody needs to worry. No prayers are required. No other visual thinking is required. It's just pure science. So all the best to everyone out there. Thank you.
And here is a collage. Of course, I couldn't get all my heroes here, but we tried to capture a few of them. We strongly recommend you to follow us so that you stay updated, and we can keep sharing more information with you. And that's the end of my slideshow. So I'm going to be asking you all questions now. Oh, or do you all have questions, or should I ask questions?
Yes, ma'am. There are a few questions that have come in. So we've made a note of them in the chat box. So we could either tackle those first, or we could go ahead with your questions to the audience.
We can take up doubts first. I think that would be great. Once everything is settled, then I think everyone would be better be able to participate in the case discussions that we have planned next.
Yeah, so my questions are going to be very difficult. I'm just warning you all.
Okay, ma'am. So, yes, ma'am. So the first question is from Shreya Ray, and she asked that, is autism the most common cause from Fragile X? Does Fragile X cause autism the most common disorder?
Around 4%. Around 4% of children who have autism will have autism because of Fragile X. That's what I said when you go out there and practice. And so if I'm in a room full of doctors and I ask them, how many of you, how many children with autism have you seen? And a doctor says 100. I say, okay, and how many with Fragile X have you seen? And he'll say none. So I said, okay, so you missed 4 children with Fragile X. That's the ratio. So it's 4%, between 2 to 4%. I would say 4%. Internationally, many organizations recommend that every child who has autism be tested for Fragile X. So I hope that answers you.
Yes, ma'am. And next question is from Ashwarya. And she asked, what are the red flags which we should keep in mind so that we can test for Fragile X?
So that's a lovely question. What are the red flags? If you are seeing a child who has a developmental delay and is showing few signs of autism or autistic traits, and you have a list of the physical features to look out for, which I have given you, and of course, please feel free to take the hard copies. You will see a long face, large ears, like a prominent jawline, forehead. These are all simple, small red flags. Believe me, we've had cases where, okay, so children with Fragile X syndrome love being social, which is absolutely the opposite of autism. If a child has autism and Fragile X will prevail over autism. So, if you ever come across a child who has autism and is trying to be social, that's a red flag. If you come across a child who has autism, is trying to be social, and has a long face, that's a red flag. When you come across a child who has autism, and before you make a diagnosis, ask the mother about, usually your intake sheet talks about the pregnancy and the delivery. Ask her if she had fertility issues. If she did, that's a red flag. If you see a child who's had delay or is on the spectrum or has gone through a surgery for correction of a squint, that's a red flag. A child who has repetitive ear infections and delayed milestones, that's a red flag. So you have lots of red flags in the child himself for you to doubt Fragile X. So if you see a child with hyperextensible joints, if you see a child who, so it's very cute, but a child with autism will not like to be in a photograph. A child with Fragile X will always want to be in the photograph, but will never look at the camera. So these are very small things. And I know, the biggest and the best of the doctors have made a diagnosis of Fragile X over autism because they felt the child was interested in being social. He was interested in talking to the doctor and trying to be social. And because of that one small hint, they sent him for testing and it turned out to be Fragile X. So you have a lot of red flags.
Ma'am, so the next question is by Nikita. She asks, does the Fmr Gene 1 mutation have an association with the consanguineous marriage between the parents? Consanguineous marriage between the parents.
Yeah.
Not really, because the Fmr1 gene in itself is, of course, active. So whether both the parents have it or one parent have it, it will not really, of course, if both parents have the Fmr1 pre-mutation, it does increase the chances, but that's nothing to do with the same community.
Okay, ma'am. And Swadha asked, can gene replacement therapy be considered as a potential cure for Fragile X?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Jayashree asks, are there any cures available or is symptomatic management the only option?
So what would a cure for Fragile X be? It would be the opposite of what causes Fragile X. What causes Fragile X is a gene shutting down. So the cure would be switching on the gene, not possible yet. Replacing the protein, not possible yet. So yes, to answer you, management of the symptoms is the way forward. There is a lot of research happening and doctors are trying a lot of things, but there's nothing down to action till today.
Okay, ma'am. And I think the last question is by Aishwarya again. Are there any antenatal markers for diagnosis, just like in Down syndrome?
So if you do suspect that a woman is a carrier, which would be in a scenario if she has a child already with Fragile X and she's pregnant again, that is a red flag. And then you can do amniocentesis at 12 weeks and you'll get the result in 4 weeks, and you get the you get to know whether the child is affected or not.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
So
you
now
so
you
much,
can ask us
ma'am.
questions.
Yeah.
Now I all get up for my questions. They're going to be really difficult.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, shoot.
So in the embryonic development, like in boys, Fragile X causes macroorchidism, right? So can that be detected before birth?
So why would it? No, so the macroautism does not display at birth. It displays at puberty.
Okay, ma'am. And the second question is that why are boys more severely affected? Like, I just can't understand. I mean, if one gene
That
is
is
so
the
severely
question I should ask you all. Yeah, you all are
Yes, ma'am.
doctors. You all are medical. I'm not even a doctor.
I know, but I don't understand why boys are so severely affected and girls aren't.
Okay, so I'm not going to give you this answer straightforward. Now, let me ask you questions. How many X's do women have?
2.
46.
2.
X's.
2. Yeah.
How many X's do men have?
1.
So if you have,
that's recessive.
So if you have a boy who's got Fragile X syndrome, he's got 1X, which is not making the Fmr1 protein. So he's going to be severely affected. But if you have a girl who has Fragile X syndrome, she's got the second X, which is supplementing and making the protein. So she's going to be mildly affected.
Okay, ma'am. I got it. Thank you.
Got it. So now my question to you is, if you come across a boy who is a full mutation of Fragile X syndrome, and you want to help the family with genetic counseling, etc., etc., whom will you test for being a carrier?
The mother.
Are you sure?
Yeah, maybe.
No. I want a definite answer.
Are the parents normal?
Yes, ma'am. For sure, we should test mother.
Why? Why would you test the mother?
Maybe she may be a carrier. She had more repeats, but she may not be presented due to supplementation of the other X chromosome.
Why can't it be the father?
If he is a carrier, he may have some symptoms at least.
You're wrong.
Ma'am, the father gives the
just a minute. A gentle request to the audience. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but to maintain the decorum, please write your answers in the chat box. We promise we won't miss anything.
Yeah.
But this discussion is more fun, Akanksha. I
think
unless it's spoiling anything for you, but otherwise,
I think
you guys can raise your hands and we can ask.
Yeah, that's a better idea.
Just raise your hands on
So
Zoom.
yes, so I do read the right answer. The boy gets the Y chromosome from his father. Absolutely correct. So it's an absolute no-brainer. If you see a boy with Fragile X syndrome, it is common sense that the carrier is the mother, but you cannot say that. You still have to be sensitive to the family's needs, and you don't know what kind of a family structure they have, and you have to just send them for genetic counseling, and it has to be put across in a very subtle manner because we are living in India, and at times these things can be challenging. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So my next question. You have a doubt? Anyone has a doubt?
Not till now.
So my next question. We have a boy, he's 4 years old and he has Fragile X syndrome, and his mother is a carrier, and she digs further to find out that her father is a carrier. Okay. She has 2 more brothers and 2 more sisters. Whom should she test and why?
Just the sisters.
Why?
Because the sisters will get the X from the dad.
And then they'll pass
and
on.
they will get the second X from their respective mothers. So the dad might have that X linked.
Might have, no, definitely has. So
yeah, the dad has the X linked.
The rule of thumb is a man who is a carrier for Fragile X will pass it on to all of his daughters and none of his sons. And we've had these real life case studies wherein this woman's son is 7 years old and she recently got to know that he has Fragile X and not autism. And then she figures she has 2 younger sisters who are yet to get married. And it actually changed a lot of things in their family. So it's very, very important for us to remember when we are looking at a child, you're not only looking at the child, you're looking at the child, his parents, uncles and aunts and extended family. And that's a very, very important thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Got too serious?
We're processing it actually.
Okay, so I'm surprised nobody's asked me one question, which came in one of the case studies where Sangeeta says, my oldest son has mosaicism. Why hasn't anyone asked me what is mosaicism?
We have studied this in genetics chapter, I guess.
So y'all know what it is. Okay, cool, my work done. You can ask now. Yeah, but now he answered.
Yes,
so when you have a child with Fragile X syndrome and they say he's got mosaicism, that means a few of his cells are shut down and not making the protein, but there are a few cells that are making protein. And in that case, he will be mildly affected. So that's a very important thing to remember. I mean, of course, it's a very tiny detail I've given you, but it's an important thing to remember.
Yes, ma'am.
So what I would say and strongly recommend is be very careful when you all are taking your intake sheets, devise them, very carefully, keeping in mind, because I think it's very often it's your question which is going to provoke, it's going to provoke the thoughts in the parent's mind. And when the parent comes to you, they are just flooded with so many emotions more than facts and figures. So that is one very big advice. Of course, you need to be very sensitive. So sometimes we have families where like this mother whose 2 sisters, she knows they are carriers because it's common sense, but she's like, how do I tell them this? It's so difficult. It's so difficult for a mother to tell her 2 younger unmarried sisters that, look, my son has a genetic condition and I'm a carrier and I know you're a carrier. So another practice that we often follow is we have a very simple letter which explains it in a very not a very overwhelming way, but a more scientific way, keeping a lot of options open for questions. And that's a very good suggestion you can give to the family. We are happy to provide you with a copy of the letter. She could just probably put the whole thing in a letter and give it to her sister, because it would take her time to process it and come to terms with it. She would want to read up more about it. And when it's done through a letter, it's just easier.
Yes, ma'am.
I think someone.
Yeah, someone is raising their hand.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you about this NT scan. Like, since Fragile X is actually a chromosomal disorder, we're doing a neural translucency scan. We can detect this, right? Like at 12 weeks.
Sorry, you'll have to repeat that.
Since Fragile X is a chromosomal disorder, we can detect this when the child is in the mother's womb, right? During the NT scan.
No, not in the scan. You need to do amniocentesis. You need to test the DNA.
Okay.
It has to be a DNA test. So it has to be amniocentesis. So the traditional way of a carrier having a child who is not affected is 12 weeks amniocentesis, get the results after another 4 weeks, and then decide when she knows he's affected or not, she decides what to do.
Okay, thank you.
And ma'am, we have one more question. So how can we prevent Fragile X syndrome once the parents have diagnosed as carriers?
How can we prevent it? That's a very good question. More than saying prevent it, I would like to say giving them information and equipping them to make an informed decision. Okay, so what are the few options they have? You have a woman with you whose first child has Fragile X and she wants to plan a second child. Option number one, and which is the cheapest option, is to go in for a normal pregnancy, test at 12 weeks, know the status of the child. If the child is positive, let the family decide whether they want to keep it or terminate it. It's absolutely ethical, legal, allowed in our country because it's a genetic condition. That is something many families have done, but it is a big toll on the physical health of the mother. The second option, which is now available in India, is pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. So the couple would have to go for IVF and the embryos are tested for Fragile X and the healthy embryos are implanted. So this technology for Fragile X is available in India. It is an expensive affair, and but it will save the couple innumerable pregnancies and trials. The third option is a donor egg or a donor embryo. We also need to understand that the ovaries of a woman who is a carrier for Fragile X are going to age a lot faster than another woman. So she has chances of achieving menopause faster, and hence her ovarian reserve will get depleted. So we shouldn't delay it too much. Like I had a parent from Delhi, and she was 30 and she came to me for her 2-year-old son. And as we spoke, we usually like to know more about the family. And she said, my older sister has a daughter. Her daughter is absolutely normal. But at 35, she reached menopause. Now that was a red flag, a huge red flag. So I said, okay, do you want to have a second child? And she's saying, yes, but maybe after 5-6 years. So I said, my advice to you is to go back to Delhi and get your eggs frozen and have a child after 6 years, but you are heading to an early menopause. Of course, she did not like what I said, I tried to say it as nicely as I could. 6 months down the line, she calls me howling that she's reached menopause and she can never have her own biological children. So these are things we need to be careful about. Again, like I'm saying, when you see a child with Fragile X syndrome, you're not only dealing with that one child, you're dealing with an entire family. You need to have the insight to be able to guide the family to a genetic counselor. Like in this case, if the genetic counselor had advised them to check her ovarian reserve, she could have probably had another child.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, there's one more question. So, does Fragile X cause symptoms that are not compatible with the adult life?
Okay. You'll have to explain it to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's trying to ask that symptoms which are prevalent when the child is small and when the child becomes mature, then the symptoms go away.
I think it means that not compatible with adult life means difficulty to prolong life, to continue living. So a life-threatening situation, can a life-threatening situation occur?
Fragile X is not life-threatening. It doesn't affect the longevity of the individual.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Are there any more questions from your end that are very difficult?
Oh, great, ma'am.
Okay.
In all your exams.
All right.
So, I would really say that y'all might have come here thinking you're going to get something from me, but I have an ask from you, and I'm going to ask you for your support to help us create awareness for Fragile X. It's very, very, very important. We've just crossed 22nd July. This year, on 22nd July, 22 buildings all over India were lit up in teal green to create awareness for Fragile X. And that's an important impact. And it's just been 2 days. Today's the 25th. We've already got 3 messages on Instagram of families whose children have Fragile X. And it all starts with awareness. Everything starts with awareness. So I definitely would ask all of you to please take our mission of creating awareness to another level. Of course, everyone's active on social media. Join us. Put up a small post. Just put a post saying, I am aware of Fragile X. Do you know about it? Read up about it. Anything you want. I mean, if you've seen our Instagram page, of course, we have a lot of celebrities talking about it. And just anything, but any contribution from your end to help us create awareness for Fragile X will truly go a very, very long way. And that's my plea.
Yes, ma'am. That's great.
Thank you, ma'am. We hope that those who have attended this call today will take up this on their shoulders and spread more awareness about Fragile X. Furthermore, if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask another question.
Anything you.
Yeah, we'll just take questions for a few more minutes and then we could move on to the closing address.
And I think very often people have questions after 2-3 days because they process it. So you can reach out to us on all the social media platforms. We have a website, we have a phone number, Instagram, and we're quite hands-on. And Kinisha is here. She is assisting us at Fragile X India, and she herself is very good with it.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Yeah, I know you're here, darling. So she is the next she's the next Fragile X queen in the making. So Are
That's great, ma'am.
She doesn't show her face, but So if you all have questions, please come up with questions. And also again, anyone who wants a copy of the intake sheets or our handouts, just DM us. We are very happy to share it with you. We want to empower you to help innumerable families. If we have how many ever attendees today, each one of you can actually go out and reach there.
Great. So
okay, just for everyone's convenience, so I'll be dropping the links for your Instagram page and your Twitter handles on the WhatsApp group with the participants in it. So if anyone has any more questions that they think of in the next few days, please feel free to reach out to Shalini ma'am and the entire team of Fragile X. Also, another thing, we will be sending like a feedback form for this entire session. So please make sure everyone attending this fills that form. So based on the attendance form I sent in earlier and the feedback form, y'all are going to get your certificates for attendance. And that being said, I'd like to hand it over to Akansha for the closing address. Thank you, Shalini ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This was truly enlightening and so insightful. That really, really was amazing. That was beautifully explained. And thank you so much, all the participants, for participating so enthusiastically. And in between, it literally felt like it's becoming impossible to manage with such people, so many people so actively participating. But ma'am, that was all you. That was so amazing. And also, guys, we'll be sharing the ma'am's Instagram handle and ma'am's contact details once in the group again, and you can contact her. And I hope everyone learned something today, because I really learned a lot. And we have many such exciting events coming up for you in future. And some of the events lined up for this month are the World Hepatitis Day workshop on 28th of July. Then we have, as we told earlier, we have Disability Pride Month going on, and we have a group discussion event planned. So all the people who are into public speaking, please go for it. And we have exciting prizes for you as well. And also we are opening up our support group sessions to help out all the people with disabilities out there. So please share that with as many people as possible. Please spread the word. We really hope to reach out to as many people in need out there. And thank you so much once again, Shalini ma'am and Kinesha ma'am. That was so amazing. You literally are the most adorable people in the world.
It was our pleasure, and we're really glad you reached out to us again this year. And I'm glad to see the impact, because I think over the last 1 year we've had so many medical students and webinars, and it's very important to empower y'all at this point, because I know y'all will never forget Fragile X, that's for sure.
Yes.
And please join us on Instagram. Yeah.
All right, ma'am. So great. So we'll just have a group photo. So everybody, please switch on your camera if you are comfortable. So
please switch on your cameras. We want it for our. We will save it as an event thing. So has the post event questionnaire been sent?
No, not yet.
On the Friday right now.
I'll send it on the WhatsApp chat after.
Send it on the Zoom. Send it here in Zoom thing, and we'll take a picture before we conclude. So you have an interesting lineup of events. If anyone here has joined us from outside of Doctors for a Cause, please feel free to join our team. We do social work all year around. And the links for the same and all the upcoming events, it's all on our Instagram handle. So we'll share all the links with you in the WhatsApp group, I think. Meanwhile, let's take a picture and let's remember this amazing event.
And remember Fragile X more than that.
Fragile X. That's why the event is all about
Fragile X. It's a good idea. Let's take a picture with X's. That's
yes, ma'am.
Like You're never going to forget it then.
Let's
do that.
Yeah, like this.
I request everyone to switch on their cameras, please.
And make an X.
I'll make half an X.
And then who presses the button?
Yeah, so who's pressing?
Can one more person take the picture? I've taken a couple of them. One more person can take them.
Okay, please share them with us.
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
Done.
Who is taking the picture right now?
1 second.
Is any participant using their phone? We could use some help here, please.
Actually, wait, I'm taking from my laptop.
I can help
on the WhatsApp group.
Yes. Ishan and Sanchi,
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Go, I'm taking, okay? Yeah, done.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll post all the links you need. Akanksha, would you like to end this?
Yeah, so I have already said all that I wanted to, and thank you so much once again, Shalini ma'am, for collaborating, and this was truly amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You too.
All right, and everyone will send you that second form on the WhatsApp chat. Please fill it. All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone for attending. Take care.